When it comes to cancer, everybody says the same thing. Eat your vegetables, exercise, and don't smoke. And that's great advice, but there's other foods that have impressive evidence behind them that don't get any love. So in this video, we're covering 7 surprising foods that help fight cancer. First on our list are nuts. We often think of nuts as heart food. Some people even worry about nuts because they're fatty, they have concentrated calories, so maybe they lead to weight gain, and excess weight is a risk factor for cancer. But nuts are actually linked to less weight gain, possibly because they're satiating and the fat is wrapped in fiber. And we consistently see lower risks of cancer in people who consume more nuts. One meta-analysis found a high consumption of nuts was associated with lower risk of developing cancer. This protective effect was especially seen for cancers of the digestive system, like colorectal cancer and pancreatic cancer. And it was specifically seen for tree nuts, so almonds, walnuts, cashews, not peanuts, which grow underground. And they saw what we call a linear association, so the more nuts consumed, the lower the cancer risk, up to about 20 grams a day, which is less than the palm of your hand. They've also seen lower risk of dying of cancer with high intake of nuts. Now, cancer is really difficult to study because it takes so long to develop. It takes decades. So we usually don't have randomized trials. So we do 2 things. We look at this type of link between intake of the food and risk of cancer, and we carefully try to rule out obvious explanations, like differences in smoking, alcohol, BMI, total calories, exercise. And after we take those out of the equation, this relationship between high intake of nuts and lower risk of cancer still remains. And the second thing we do is we try to understand how a certain food might affect cancer risk. So nuts, for example, contain tocopherols, which are powerful antioxidants. And nuts are also good sources of L-glutanins, which are converted by your gut bugs, your microbiome, into compounds that have anti-inflammatory effect. So these compounds, together with the tocopherols, are thought to play a role in this cancer protective effect of nuts. Caution, when it comes to nuts, we're talking about the actual nuts with no additives. Not chocolate covered, not honey roasted, not an excessive amount of salt, just the nuts unprocessed. Okay, another food with impressive evidence when it comes to fighting cancer is coffee. I know, coffee's not really a food, but who's counting? Coffee gets a really bad rep, maybe because it contains caffeine, we're very suspicious, it's a drug, but we consistently see lower risks of cancer in coffee drinkers, especially liver cancer, where we see up to a 50% lower risk in high coffee drinkers, consuming around 5 cups of coffee a day, and endometrial cancer, which is a type of cancer of the uterus. In fact, coffee shows one of the strongest links between a specific food or a specific item that we consume and cancer protection. Interestingly, we see a similar relationship for decaf. So it's not the caffeine, it's something else in the coffee. Okay, how would coffee protect against cancer? Well, coffee is a good source of polyphenols, which are potent antioxidants. Coffee also helps reduce insulin resistance and liver fat, so it improves overall liver health. There's some concerns with acrylamide in roasted coffee, but scientists have measured it. The levels are far below the thresholds where it causes any problems. Do pay attention, avoid very hot coffee because it can raise risk of oral cancer, damage to the cells in the mouth and the throat. And also the additives. When we start adding a boatload of sugar and cream to coffee, that's often when we ruin it. All right, moving on. When it comes to fighting cancer, we hear a lot about green vegetables and some fruits, like berries. But another type of fruit that doesn't get as much attention is citrus, like oranges, tangerines, grapefruit. We see lower risk of stomach cancer with high citrus intake and lower risk of lung cancer among smokers. One reason citrus is beneficial is their high content of vitamin C, which is a powerful antioxidant, and also their content of carotenoids, which also have antioxidant function. All right, what if I just drink a glass of OJ instead of actually eating the orange? As a general rule, it's better to eat the actual fruit because the juice lacks the fiber, which feeds our microbiome. We also get a lot more of the naked sugars in the juice than we would the fruit. It would take 3 or 4 oranges to get the same amount of those sugars as we do in a large cup of orange juice. Now, sometimes this is exaggerated. I've heard people say drinking fruit juice is the same as drinking soda. That's not true at all. The fruit juice still has a lot of vitamins and other nutrients as long as it's actual fruit juice, fresh squeezed, or just 100% fruit juice without sugar added. Bottom line, drinking a glass of orange juice is much healthier for you than Mountain Dew. It's not even close. But as a general rule, if you can, favor the actual whole unprocessed fruit. Okay, next we have another food that lights the internet on fire, and that's whole grains. So oats, barley, quinoa, whole grain bread. I've heard people say all kinds of things on the internet. Whole grains are just sugar, they contain no nutrients, they cause diabetes, but the actual scientific evidence tells a very different story. We see a consistently lower risk of colorectal cancer with whole grain intake. This link is strong enough that the American Institute for Cancer Research has stated there is probable evidence that whole grains decrease risk of colorectal cancer, and the evidence is strong enough to justify dietary recommendations. And these organizations are pretty strict. They don't say this for just any food. Whole grains provide viscous fiber, which our microbiome then converts into short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, which feed our gut wall and protect the gut barrier. Short-chain fatty acids also reduce inflammation and promote insulin sensitivity. And whole grains are also a good source of resistant starch, which is very powerful in reducing liver fat. Caution with instant oats. They come in different flavors, strawberry flavored, chocolate flavored, and these are processed forms of oats that have been chopped, pre-cooked, and have a lot of refined sugars added. So you want to favor the actual unprocessed grain, steel-cut oats or rolled oats with no additives. Okay, at number 5, we have one of the most misunderstood foods when it comes to cancer, and that is soy. Soy contains phytoestrogens. So it sounds like estrogen, and so the belief is it causes breast cancer. But we don't see that. In fact, if anything, we see the opposite. In women diagnosed with breast cancer, those who consume more soy have a lower risk of death and recurrence, the cancer coming back. This is because in breast tissue, phytoestrogens actually do the opposite of mammalian estrogens. They counter the effect of estrogen. In addition to the effect on breast cancer, there's also some suggestive evidence of lower risk of lung cancer in never smokers with soy intake. The dose recommended is about 1 to 2 servings a day. Examples of what 1 serving of soy would look like would be, for example, a cup of soy milk, 3 ounces of tofu, or half a cup of edamame. And we'll wrap up with 2 more foods where the evidence isn't quite as strong as some of the others, but there's some suggestive, promising evidence there. Tea is linked to lower risk of bladder cancer, especially green tea, and flax seeds show promising early results for breast and prostate cancer, possibly because of their high content of lignans. What about dairy? Is it true that dairy causes cancer? We covered that question and a few more in this previous video, so check it out. I'll see you in there.